If somebody asked to write a play about your life, would you? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host once again, Brett Dupree, here to drop some spiritual knowledge on you. Today our interview is awesome. It's with Cathy Goguen and another person who I did not write the name down. She is a playwright, and she wrote a play about a man who has amazing resilience, and we get to interview with both of them. But before I get into that, and I will get to, you'll learn his name before I start the interview. I talk about the beginning in my interview. Wow, that was awkward. I talk about what's going on in my life so that basically, if I can't be vulnerable, how can I expect my guests to be? I was going to talk about something else, but I watched an anime before I recorded this episode, and I am bummed. Completely and totally bummed. I think I talked about this last week, how I don't believe in karma anymore because of that man who lived to be 104 who killed so many people. But sometimes, that's one of the beauties of literature. That's one of the beauties of stories, how it can affect you. And so I was watching this anime called Vinland Saga. It's about Viking era. It's really weird because everyone speaks Japanese and they don't tell you when they're speaking Danish or when they're speaking English because it takes place in the Viking England War, I believe in the 1400s. Follows some real people such as Leif Erikson and some fake people. Askeladd. Basically, it is historical in the way that Gladiator is historical, or that movie with Mel Braveheart is historical, but less so because it has fictional characters in there and practically a superhero version. It's kind of like if they took a Greek mythology route with our recent past. It's very interesting. But this interesting episode 14, where this family was talking about God and how if you pray, you go to heaven, and if you don't, you go to hell with the devil. And then there was this one lady who stole a ring of their daughter, and she was kind of worried because she did something sinful, and that means she's going to go to hell while her family goes to heaven, and she was worried about that. But during that time, went out while they're eating dinner. She was looking at her ring on the outside. The Vikings came in and slaughtered her family and all of her friends. If she had friends in the village, the entire village got slaughtered, and they stole what little food they had. And she is a sole survivor. And the way they did this episode was heartbreaking. The villagers who did nothing wrong being punished and killed, and practically the entire village and most likely the entire family lines just wiped out in an instant by honestly just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And she survives because she did something wicked, and she was just hiding her wicked thing from her family. And that's the only reason why she survives. And just the depiction of it, the eyes and the desperation of the people who didn't want to die, because generally people don't want to do that. And it hit me. I am legit bummed just thinking about that episode, the way they played it. I had no idea what was going to happen, honestly. I expected as they go through this girl's perspective, because anytime you put somebody in somebody's perspective, they're either going to be important or a huge disappointment, meaning you think they're going to live and then they die, right? Then they just get killed. So I did look up the wiki to see what happens to this character. I guess she only appears a little bit more. I was wondering if she was going to become mainstay, because she kind of went a little Jokerish at the end, feeling exhilarated by stealing the ring and then feeling exhilarated by being the only person left alive by the fact that there is so much evil in this world. That gets me thinking into one of my main philosophies in life, which is life is meaningless, but we are the ones that give it meaning. In fact, I was listening to a podcast about the Dunning-Kruger Effect on Factually by Adam Conover, who does Adams Ruins Everything. But one thing they're talking about is one thing human beings are amazing at is seeing patterns in things that don't have a pattern. We can take random events and craft a story about that makes sense. And it's very easy for us to get caught up in that fact, which means I don't necessarily believe in this. Yeah, as I said, I don't believe in law of attraction, so I don't believe in those synchronicities. But we are the one that give it meaning. We're the one who creates that meaning. Each individual person is essentially creating their own reality. So you do create your own reality. What happens in your world and how you perceive it is different than how I perceive it, which is why two people can see the exact same thing. Like take a football game or any sport. Someone will see a foul and someone will see not a foul. Someone will see a catch and someone will see not a catch. And it'll be obvious to both people because of how they're perceiving that individual thing. And even if one person is quote unquote right, it doesn't matter because the other person is seeing it their way. And especially if they internalize it, it gets to the point where even having it questioned is pain, physical pain. So let's think about that. You create your reality and life is meaningless and you give life meaning. When you think about that, what does that mean to you? For me, it means as I am on this earth, I can create the life that I want because I can interpret anything happening the way that I want it to. So if I want to believe in a world where everything works out for me, I am the one who makes that happen because how I perceive this world, how I perceive the way things happen for me. If I want to believe that, I can. If I want to believe in some sort of universal law of attraction, I am the one who creates that meaning because I am the one who takes the random, meaningless things that happen in my life and I construct a narrative. And if that serves my life, then yeah, that is helpful. And if it doesn't serve my life, then it's not helpful. And I've been working on that for a few years now, trying to really work on creating my life the way that I want it. And there's a lot of ups and downs, especially with not having the outer reality affect my inner reality. Because one thing that's affecting me now is being horribly out of shape, especially after my hurt knee. That makes me even less active than I was. Thus, simple things. I went on the gym on Monday and I did the bike I could really only go for 5 minutes before my body felt like it was tired. So my goal is next time to do 6 minutes. And hopefully by the end of the month, I can do 8. And hopefully by the end of the year, I can get up to 10 to 15 minutes and be able to push myself and gradually improve. As I am now determined to get my body in a state where I am in relative shape. I need to create my why and I need to create my meaning to do that so I can create the consistency for me to keep on going even though the random series of events that happened as well as choices I've made and the way my genetics works and my outside environment and a lot of factors and have created a situation where I've become this. And I'm not saying I'm not responsible. Of course I am. I've made a lot of decisions, but at the same time, I have a lot of things coming against me. Mostly the thing is when you get fat, it's harder to lose weight because your body wants to be fat. That's why you're fat. If your body did not want to be fat, you wouldn't be fat. So you're fighting against your body. And if you think about it, losing weight is just a form of cannibalism because you're eating yourself. It's just societal accepted cannibalism. And speaking of societal accepted cannibalism, I'm not going to go into... That just makes me laugh. All right, let me introduce you to my guest after that terrible, terrible segue. Kat met tragedy, and then she met Matt. Since meeting, the two have formed an incredible bond, and she has written a play about his life, Unstoppable by Design. Now the two are working on their first novel together, which explores stories from Matt's life and the lessons he's learned. Between them, they have experienced divorce, brain tumors, addiction, and the death of a parent twice in less than 24 hours. Their names rhyme, but that's just a small part of the charm of this couple and their palpable chemistry. Now here is my interview with Cathy and Matt. Hello, Kat and Matt, and welcome to my podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us.
So how did you two meet?
It was actually on a Quora article I saw posted that drew my attention in, and I started reading it. It was about a young person someone in their 20s, which seems young to me. They were thinking life was over because their friends were making more money and farther along in their job, that kind of thing. And Matt had responded to this person, telling them some of his story and his experiences and encouraging him that life was indeed not over. That spoke to me. was a high school teacher previously. I thought the fact that Matt had talked about dropping out of high school and then going on to find success with getting a job at Cornell University, that was quite interesting to me because most of my students who had dropped out did not have that same kind of success or even path. That was the first thing that intrigued me, and I thought this might make a good play. Even though the article or the post was a couple of years old, I thought I'm going to send out an email to Matt and just see his thoughts on if he would allow me to explore writing a play about his life. And that's the beginning of how we met.
So you've been interested in being a playwright for a while then?
Yeah, I would say from the time that I could talk, I've been writing plays. It generally started with catalogs that my aunt would give me, Sears and Roebuck catalogs, and I would tear out characters and write these little skits and act them out with these torn out paper dolls from the catalog. So I think that's really where my playwriting began. Pretty much all of my life I've been writing plays in one form or another.
Have you actually submitted your plays?
I have 3 of them published, and lots more to send out.
That's exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you.
What was the thought process in submitting the first one? Were you nervous?
I only wrote the first one because I was a drama teacher. First year, they wanted to start a new drama class. I had been teaching English, and so they asked me if I would be interested, and I don't like to read, so any English classes I could get rid of would be great. So I thought, yes, drama would definitely be something I'd like to teach. I take that position, and then they of course tell me there's no money for anything, so there's no scripts. There's these 15 students that want to learn about theater, and they needed a script. Necessity, I guess, was the key to my first play being written, and it was very well received, and it would be 6 or 7 years later before I would decide to submit it, because I guess with each group that would perform it in years to come, I would make a few changes. And when I started getting play catalogs, I would think my play to me seems like it could fit in this catalog. I sent it off, and, it's a rather long wait, like 8 or 9 months before you hear anything. I guess I'd kind of forgotten about it after a while. You just kind of go on with life. But when it came that they wanted to publish it, and this was Pioneer Drama, I was really excited, and that was the beginning, publication-wise anyways.
Man, that must have been just the full range of emotions during that first performance.
There have been a lot of emotions, and each time with this particular play, which is the first one, May I Have Your Attention Please, really been performed all over the U.S. and Canada, Ireland, and so it's really had a good run, and especially with social media being more popular, it's easier access to the students and the actors to reach out to me. So I've got to see one group did a Facebook Live that was from Newfoundland, and they were at a provincial competition, and they allowed them to do Facebook Live posts so I could actually watch it. Just a lot of neat stories have tied into that. Each group has kind of just made it their own, and that's exciting to me.
So your play about Matt's life is unstoppable by design. What about his life really steps out in making it unstoppable?
The fact that so many things happen to him, and a lot of people stop when 1 or 2 of the things would have happened. They would have just given up and said, this is what the universe is meant for me, and I'm tired of fighting, I'm tired of struggling, and I'm just gonna accept it and stay where I am, or worse. And he did not do that. So it was no matter how many times he got knocked down, he got back up, and that's pretty inspiring to me.
Can you give us an example of how he was knocked down?
Brain tumor, dropping out of high school, losing his mother at a young age, marriage that had addiction issues, then being a single parent to his son, and I would say not really having a lot of skills. It was a new role for him. So supporting, having to work and also be a new parent at a also young age, just like all of these things. And there's more, but those are just some of the things that are fascinating to me.
So Matt, what was your mindset in going through all of those things, especially like the brain tumor?
When I first found out about it, the same week I had lost my job. I was working at a small biotech company. They were doing some downsizing and I was laid off basically. So then later in the week I found out about the tumor. At first I was like, wow, I need to figure this out. What am I going to do now? I was married at the time. I had my son, my wife's daughter, her mother, a house and whatever. It's a big lifestyle change. It was really difficult at first trying to figure out what direction I needed to go in. My health obviously was an issue, and I spent 8 months. It was 3 months before I had the surgery, and then another 5 months of recovery. Had a couple other surgeries in there as well. During that time, I decided to pursue an engineering degree, started on that path. My mindset was that I needed to do whatever I had to do to ensure that this low point in my life would never happen again. And that's what I did.
So during those times when you had those negative thoughts, because they had to come, how did you pick yourself back up again?
I think it was just the thought that I just needed to go on, and I couldn't let my situation dictate where I was going to end up. I mean, I knew I had more that I wanted to do in life, more things that needed to be done. You just keep going. You have people depending on you. So if you stop moving forward, then usually what happens is life catches up with you and rolls over you and leaves you in a worse spot than before. So I just kept moving. Yeah. So
during this time, did you receive any support?
My wife at the time, Diane, she was very supportive through the surgery and the recovery and all that. As far as other support, friends and things like that, they helped me through a lot of the issues that I was having. But mainly it was just me and my perseverance, I guess, of wanting to be in a better situation than I was in at that time.
So what was your first thought when Kat contacted you and putting your life into a play?
It was interesting. I had a magazine do an article about me a few years before that. So when she contacted me, I was like, oh, well, that sounds cool, but then, I was kind of thinking like, I'll have to check this out and make sure she's legit, because somebody contacts you and says, hey, I want to write a play about you. First thing is, man, this girl's crazy. So I checked out her website and stuff, and she is, in fact, a legitimate playwright and does really well. And so we started down that path.
So you had a magazine article about you as well?
Yeah. So as Kat said, I dropped out of high school. I ended up at Cornell working in the particle physics lab, designing things for their particle accelerators. Had never been to college. Somebody contacted the magazine. I still don't know who it was. They contacted me and said, hey, we heard you're designing particle accelerators and you don't have a degree. I was like, yeah. So they said, we want to do an article about you. Sure. Kind of weird, but it was interesting.
Were there any second thoughts about putting your life in such a public display out there? There's a certain amount of vulnerability putting yourself out there.
I had that with the play. There's like a line that you don't want to cross. Part of it was driven, my son is 25 now. He was going to read the play and potentially see it. There's a story in there about his mother and some of the issues that we were going through at the time. I didn't want, it was hard to draw the line of how much you wanted to say. And that's the same with any other stories as well. If you put yourself out there, then you leave yourself open to criticism, and I've certainly had my share of that. In the end, I felt if my story helped someone in some way or caused them to think differently about their life, some aspect of it, then that would be good. That was the deciding factor. A lot of things. And now we're even going through the same sort of thing with the book that we're writing. A lot of the same thing, a lot of stories about my life and different things that have happened and the lessons that I learned from them. It's hard to draw the line of what's saying too much.
How do you deal with criticism?
I try not to let it bother me. There's been a few things that people have said that were unexpected. It is what it is. You just have to shrug it off. I mean, a lot of the things that happened that they're talking about happened in the past. There's no changing it. You just gotta keep moving forward.
So I'm curious, one thing that happens when you go through your life, you can gain, especially at an older age of looking back, you can gain a new perspective. Was there something about both going through this book and going through the play that actually surprised you when you thought about it a second time?
Probably the fact that I might have something more to say. I mean, I always felt like my life was just my life and whatever happened, and I didn't really think too much about it. Then after Kat and I wrote the play, she kind of showed me that it was a good vehicle to help people along their path. At first, I think I was a little resistant to that. So I think I gained that perspective at least.
That's what really cool. One thing I've noticed about doing this podcast and asking people to tell their stories is really most people's stories are not heralding of, plane crashes and stuff. It's just dealing with life, and life can be difficult for us all.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is what you make it, I guess, and everybody has their share of heartache and pain and bad things that they go through, and some people get past that and others don't, and it's the ones who don't that we're trying to reach.
Is the play out there? Have you watched it?
It was performed one time. There was an evening of plays that Kat put together, 3 of her plays. So it was performed for the first time then, and it was a little nerve-wracking, but it was cool.
Do you have a moment like in Hamlet?
No. The one really cool thing that happened was there was a kid from another high school who was performing in another play. He was one of the main characters in that play. He came to Kat and was telling her that he was inspired by my play because he was in a bad home life situation. He was graduating from high school. He was supposed to go to college, but apparently his scholarships dried up at some point. So he was ready to just kind of give up, get a job in a factory somewhere and live life. After seeing the play, he was inspired to go back to school and do whatever he had to do to be successful. And, so that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that, talking to him and hearing his story and stuff. So
that must have felt fantastic.
Yeah, it did. That was the first time that I think I saw that the play had an impact on people. People had read the play and they said, "Oh, wow, this is really great. And, you're amazing," and things like that. But when you actually get to talk to someone who it's affected like that, it's a different feeling.
So what advice would you give to any people out there who wants to put their story but is a little apprehensive?
I think that, of course, you need to feel somewhat comfortable with it because, again, it does open up the door for things that unintended consequences, I guess you could say. But it can be therapeutic to find a voice that tells your story. I also think that it can impact others that you may not even think about that you have anything significant to offer. But if you put it out there, I guarantee you there's going to be somebody that connects with it. It's a good avenue to help people and also a good way to work through a better understanding of yourself, I think. And, I learned a great deal just from writing the play. So I think I was just as much the audience as anyone else that would see it or read it. I just didn't know that at the time. Originally, I didn't start out for it to be therapeutic to me, but definitely I think that was the outcome. So, I would want people to be comfortable with sharing, but to consider that it could have a positive impact.
What did you learn from your play?
I learned from the play that I needed to come out of being stuck and I needed to move forward in life. My father had passed away almost a year before I met Matt. And so it was a very unexpected death and a traumatic one. Pretty much was shut down from life after that. I didn't write. I didn't socialize. I just grieved, remained traumatized because my father was the most significant person in my life. And to have him taken away 2 times in less than 24 hours, it left me in some kind of state that I never had experienced. So pretty much from that point, which was September 22nd, 2017, until Halloween on 2018, when I read the Quora article, I just basically was here existing, but not with any purpose. So I was stuck in just existing. So I think definitely the lesson for me was I'm not the only person that has experienced loss or trauma or grief or bad things happen that shouldn't happen, those kinds of things. It was time for me to move forward as well. And the play was the beginning of that.
That's so cool. What advice would you give to people who want to pursue their dreams but also have a day job?
Work extra hard. We have a quote in the book, everybody wants to be a lion until it's time to hunt. Everybody wants that dream, but they don't necessarily want to put in the work. If you really want the dream, then you have to be willing to make some sacrifices, and having a day job to pay the basic bills and that kind of thing, unless you want to be a starving artist and live in a box or, whatever. I mean, that's one way to pursue your dream too, but you're going to work hard with dreams, and you just have to be willing to do. And that's one thing in Matt's story. Early on, when he was married the first time and had the son, he was working 2 jobs and sometimes a part-time 3rd job. You have to be willing to make those sacrifices sometimes to move ahead and pursue your dream. I just don't want people to think that it's easy, because most things are not, but well worth it, and you appreciate it more, I think, if you worked hard for it.
Awesome. That's very inspiring. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
What has been the most difficult part in getting this book out?
So we're still in the midst of writing the book. We hope to finish it up by the end of the year. Really, the hardest part is time. We've been pretty lucky. We work well together, and the ideas come together really sort of easily. We struggle with writes and edits and things like that. In general, it's been going pretty well. The time factor is really the biggest thing. I work full time and pretty busy with work and stuff. You just have to keep plugging away at it, and hopefully you get to a point where you're happy with what you're putting out.
That's true. The book you release is 100% better than the book you don't.
That's right. Yeah. And, it's a new process for us both. I mean, I've never written anything other than the occasional online post. And Kat's never written a book. The writing of the play went really, really well. And it was pretty effortless, I would say. There were a few things that we had to change in the play because that was just not me. But she had me crying at one point in the play, and I was like, no, that's out.
It was a beautiful scene, Brett, I have to tell you.
So because that went so well, and, there are a lot of stories, and there's more to the stories than we were able to tell in the play, we decided to pursue writing the book. So far, we're about, a third of the way in, I guess. It's going really well, I think. We've gotten some good feedback on what we've written so far, and pretty happy with it.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much.
So we're coming to the end of our time together, and one thing I like to ask my interviewees is for a 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this as if you had a time machine and you had to go back in time to your 8-year-old self, and you wanted to give yourself everything you need to live a happy, successful life, but unfortunately you'll have a minute before you're plopped back into the present. Or you can think about it in condensing your entire life's purpose into a minute. So are you ready to go?
Yeah.
Sure. I would definitely tell my 8-year-old self, if I could travel back, that these things that you think right now make you weird are going to be the things that will carry you through life. You just don't know it yet. Embrace those because you're going to need them. That's all I would say.
You want to add anything, Matt?
I would just say, Just stay away from the bad things in life. Had a few run-ins with different things that I probably shouldn't have. Be more self-aware. Understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. Be as happy as you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on my podcast, hearing your story of dropping in high school, but still going for your dreams and dealing with so many of life's hardships while still pushing forward is extremely inspiring. Also, Kat, listening to you pursuing your dream while having a full-time job, plus taking somebody's life and putting it out there and being able to put it out there, that vulnerability is something special to celebrate, being able to put your life out there, put your work out there for other people to look upon and to create something that touches people is absolutely special. And thank you for being on my podcast, and thank you for everything you do to make this world a better place.
Thank you for having us. We've enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you very much.
May your day be special.
Yours as well.
And there you have it, folks. That was my interview with Cathy and Matt. I appreciate their candor about both the creative process and also what's it like to share your story out there. In my opinion, stories are one of the most important things we can share with other people. In fact, that is a lot of what the purpose of this podcast is to get people to share their stories. Because the reality is you do not know who you're going to touch. 1,000 people can hear one story and only 10 will be affected by it, which is actually a pretty good hit rate. But if you share your story as well, then maybe we can reach another 10. And if 100 people share their stories and each one hitting a different 10, then we will hit all those 1,000. But the reality is that each one of those 1,000 also have their own story. And thus, sharing our stories of resilience and keep on pushing forward. And that's one thing I really appreciate about Matt, going through so much and still pushing forward, still going forward. And then seeing someone being inspired by that and finding their own way to contribute to the conversation of resilience, as Cathy did, in sharing that story of Matt's in a way that's different in a play. Though I would like to say that, in my humble opinion, crying is a good thing. Strength is not holding in the tears. Strength is letting it flow. At least that has been my learning over the last 41 years of my life. But at the same time, listening to the story was impressive. You know, one of the fun parts about doing this podcast is a lot of times I record these and then start editing them, and I'm like, I do not remember who this person is. What the heck am I going to listen to today when I go down to Edit Town to edit these? And then I re-listen to them and get re-inspired. It's like discovering a new present, if you will. So if you'd like to check out their book when it comes out, and the play itself, which is probably super cool, you can contact Matt and Kat at www.mayihaveYourAttentionPlease.com. And if you're interested in performing the play, Unstoppable by Design, they are also available for speaking engagements. And updates on release of their first book is also available on their website. And there you have it, folks. That is episode... Is that 47? Oh, man, 47. 47 of the Joyous Expansion Podcast. How freaking cool is that? I remember when my goal was to get 52 by August, and I didn't hit it, but now it is October, and next month I will hit my year 52 goal. Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? Isn't that fun? So if you want to email me for whatever reason, you can email me at BRE2Ts, at joyousexpansion.com. You can also check me out at joyousexpansion.com. More episodes of this podcast at pod.joyousexpansion.com. You can find me on Instagram at Joyous Expansion, Twitter at Joyous Expansion, and Facebook at Increase Your Joy. Some bad SEO there. If you like this podcast, please leave a like, leave a comment, leave a review. Anything like that is super helpful, and I'll love you forever for doing so. And once again, I am Brett Dupree, the champion of authentic joy, Joyous Expansion life coach, and catalyst of transformation for the Church of Awesome. Wishing you once again to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. I'll play my jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett. Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach, good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue, I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com, JoyousExpansion.com, yeah.